Hello, today's presentation is called How Will I Use This in the Real World? Inviting working professionals into the classroom for continued education and increased student engagement. My name is Meghan Slocombe, and I'm a master's student in the Watershed Sciences Department under Dr. Karin Kettenring. So before we get into the content of today's talk, I just wanted to give you a little bit more information about who I am. So as I said, I'm a master's student researcher. That means that I spend most of my time doing research, specifically on wetland restoration and aquatic plants. So if you don't know what aquatic plants are those green plants that you might step on when you go into a lake or a pond or a stream. And you might think, ew, what is this thing touching me? But that's my passion. That's what I'm really excited about. So I actually spend a lot of my time working with aquatic plants, identifying them, doing experiments and research with them. And then another one of my passions is actually education and mentorship. So between my undergraduate program and my master's program, I actually spent a couple of years doing environmental education, working on everything from watershed sciences to marine stuff. And really had a great time sharing kind of my excitement for the science I was excited about. And in addition to that, you can see me here with my undergraduate researcher. I really enjoyed that aspect of mentorship and bringing someone through the full process of scientific discovery. So what you're actually here for today, the things you will be learning about. One, you will get an example of how bringing working professionals into your classroom can be implemented. You'll also learn about the benefits of inviting working professionals to attend targeted classroom sessions. And then finally, probably most importantly, we'll talk about how you can use this strategy in your own classroom. So one, an example of how this strategy has actually been implemented. So here I am out in our wetlands, and this is what I see, right? So I'm out there paddling on the water. I get to see these beautiful plants with these absolutely gorgeous flowers, and I feel so lucky and fortunate. And unfortunately, I'm not necessarily feeling the same as a lot of other people about aquatic plants. Aquatic plants are notoriously difficult to ID. They're often a management issue when we have plants that aren't native to an area coming into a new habitat and taking over, which can cause issues like propellers from boats getting messed up with all the plant material, or making it difficult to swim and recreate in these beautiful wetlands and aquatic spaces. So I would say, aquatic plants, people don't necessarily see them as the great thing that they are, because they actually are an important part of these aquatic ecosystems, right? They help improve water quality. They're really important habitat for things like fish and birds. So in my mind, aquatic plants need a new PR person. That's when I reached out to my advisor, Karin, and I asked if I could give a guest lecture in her wetland and riparian plants class, specifically about aquatic plants, talking about, the ecology, why they're so important to our aquatic systems, also restoration demands and challenges, as well as identification of a lot of our local native aquatic plants. Right around the same time, we actually got an email from a local state agency employee asking if our lab would have someone that could spend some time with our state agency employees talking about some of those key features for identifying aquatic plants. So as I mentioned, these are notoriously difficult to ID. Not a lot of people do it because it's hard to do. And it's kind of a niche skill, but it can be really important when you're working on managing these aquatic systems. So here Karin and I were. We saw this as an amazing opportunity to kind of kill two birds with one stone. And we decided to invite these state agency employees to the guest lecture I was already planning on giving. And this guest lecture had three components. It was actually a 3-hour class period, which was really fortunate for me because that meant I got to talk to people about aquatic plants for 3 hours, which was really exciting. But it was also a challenge, right? 3 hours is a long period, so I had to make sure that what I was giving my students and these guests was engaging and interesting. I had to make sure that we were doing things that would keep people excited about what we were talking about in class. So to do that, I started with a lecture on aquatic plant ecology, kind of the most traditional part of this course period. Then we worked on some in-class plant ID practice, and finally we rounded that out with a field trip to the USU Innovation Pond. And over this 3-hour class period, I was able to reach 5 state employees, 5 graduate students, and 8 undergraduate students. It was really cool working with such a variety of baseline knowledges. Everyone came with different background information and different experiences to share with the classroom. Here are just a few pictures from that day. So first, me working on giving that lecture on aquatic plant ecology. Then I had actually gone and collected a specimen of 10 different aquatic plant species, and I brought those specimens into the classroom so that students could get their hands on these plants, and we could work through some of our aquatic plant guidebooks together and identify these different species, really focusing on those features that would be important when they were in the field later. Then to really, go home on these skills, we actually brought them out on a field trip to the USU Innovation Pond, where there was some impressive diversity in the aquatic plant community, and people were able to practice those skills that we had just worked on in the classroom. Okay, so what were the benefits of actually inviting these working professionals to attend the targeted classroom sessions? I would say we could kind of categorize these in benefits for students and benefits for professionals, but I would also say that there's a decent amount of overlap in some of these benefits for both groups. So to start with the students, first, they got amazing exposure to career paths. So back to the title of this presentation, kind of why do we need this information? I feel like you get that from students all the time. By inviting these working professionals to join this lesson and being able to tell our students, look, this is information that working professionals are requesting from us. So it's obviously of high demand. It's a skill and information that they'll need going into future careers. They were also able to pull knowledge from these working professionals. I was leading the class and I was able to share a lot of my own knowledge, but some of the working professionals that were in attendance had been working at their wetlands for 10 plus years. So they really had invaluable information that they were able to share with everyone there, including me, which was really cool. I think one great example of this is one of the managers has actually been working on a Eurasian water milfoil invasion at one of their sites. That's an invasive plant, so a plant we don't really want there, but it looks really similar to one of our native water milfoils. And he was able to talk about some of the different strategies and key features he looks for when he's trying to distinguish between the two. So that was great. Next, if we move to the professionals, obviously there's that component of continuing education. You could see this in multiple different ways. Maybe you have new information for your field that you want to share with these working professionals that wasn't even available when they were in school. Or maybe, kind of like this case, you have skills that you think are pretty niche and they might not have had exposure to during their education. So this is a great opportunity to kind of build upon the information they already know and supplement. Also for working professionals, they're able to recruit future workforce. This was really cool opportunity because we were able to show off the skills and knowledge that our USU undergraduate and graduate students have leaving our programs. And this was obviously information that these folks were interested in. So I think it was able to highlight some of those key skills that our students are graduating with and could potentially bring to their state agency. Of course, networking. I feel like that's really a big one here, but it's only a big one if you help to support it as the professor. Networking can be a scary thing. It can be intimidating for a lot of our younger students. So you want to try to offer them the opportunities to engage with these working professionals. So for instance, in our class, we started off right away with introductions. Everyone said their name. They said if they were an employee, where they were working, or if they were a student, what career path they were interested in following. So that gave everyone an opportunity to kind of identify folks that had similar interests. And then throughout the class session, we had multiple discussions where you were asked to talk with your neighbors, kind of engage them in discussion about the topics we were touching on, but also about things that they were interested in that they thought they might have in common. And then finally, we rounded out the day with a field trip, which I think is a really great slightly more casual environment for folks to have conversations with each other and really get to know one another. And then finally, one of those benefits that I think really helps everyone, students, professionals, and me as a teacher, is improving that academia professional relationship. We're scientists, right? So a lot of us are conducting research, and we're hoping that at the end of the day, it gets used by working professionals and it helps advance our field, right? But it's maybe not going to do that if we don't have good relationships with folks, if we're not sharing that information via multiple platforms, and also pulling on the information that working professionals are gathering themselves. That can be really invaluable, I know, especially in the field of natural resources. So that was a great benefit to see. I know personally, I was able to reach out to one of these state agency employees a couple months later, and they were able to give me some really amazing resources for one of the research projects I was working on. Okay, just a couple snippets that I got from folks who were in attendance that day. One of the state agency employees sent us an email after and said the lecture was a really useful refresher, or sometimes even an introduction, on the importance of aquatic vegetation. That was really exciting for me. If you remember from the beginning of the talk, I talked about how I thought aquatic plant people needed a new PR team, and this was exciting. I was able to remind folks that aquatic plants aren't just something to be managed and thought of as a nuisance. They're a really important part of that ecosystem. So not only was I able to help provide some of those identification skills, but I was able to also remind them of how cool aquatic plants are. Then one of our USU students said that they thought having working professionals attend the class was really helpful because we could hear what species they're seeing in the area and what the current management strategies are. That is such a good quote. Obviously, I can talk about what management strategies I'm reading about or seeing when I'm out in the field, but having actual wetland managers in the class talking about what they're doing at their own sites, so cool, and a really great way for students to hone in on what information might be important to them as they progress in their own field. Okay, potentially the most important part of this whole talk, we're going to focus next on how you can actually use this strategy in your own classroom. So our implementation. First, you need to identify well-suited lessons. And this could be a whole bunch of things, especially depending on what field you're in. For natural resources, it's really easy to find classes that focus on these skills. So maybe you're running a GIS lab and you want to help people learn how to make better maps. Maybe you're doing plant identification like we were and you want to help people with their identification skills. Maybe you're in a field where you have a prestigious speaker coming and giving a talk for your class, and it would be good to open that up to local professionals that would also be interested in that information. So there's a whole bunch of different ways you can go with this, but having an idea of what you have to offer as a professor is a really great start to this whole process. Then you want to actually reach out to your local professionals. We were lucky because the local professionals reached out to us. That made it really easy. But moving forward, I think I would really like to be able to continue doing this and maybe even broaden the number of people we're able to reach with these kinds of courses. So you want to reach out to your local professionals and you want to see what skills or knowledge they're actually interested in learning. And then you can do kind of a comparison between what they're saying they want to know and what lessons you already identified as potential opportunities for inviting working professionals to. Once you have an idea of what class you're actually going to be inviting folks to, you can start putting feelers out for who wants to join. You can get some contacts. We were able to reach a manager, and then they were able to send that information out to all of their employees. That was really great. And then finally, you need to know when they're available. We were really fortunate in the fact that our class period was already 3 hours long, so it was plenty of time to implement what we were hoping to do in this course period. So we didn't have to, mess with the schedules of our students at all, and then we were just able to invite the working professionals because the class period was right during their workday. So that worked out great for us. You can try to find a similar situation for yourself. And then finally, you want to actually send that invitation, solidify some of those logistics. And then I would argue most importantly, you want to encourage your students to engage. So just like I said when we were talking about networking earlier, it's really important for your students to recognize what kind of opportunity this is, and for you to provide the chances within the class period for them to actually engage and talk with these working professionals. Okay, so that's what I have to offer you today. Thank you so much for listening, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I have my email listed there on the slide. It is slocombe.usu@gmail.com. Thank you so much.